So I see that it is 12 o'clock, and I know that there are still several people that were registered that will probably be dialing in, but I do want to get the meeting started. It is really nice to see so many faces after so many months, and look forward to next year when we can actually be together. But I really appreciate you continuing to support CCAC and to join our programming. Respond to today's request where you show up camera ready so that we can really interact with each other. So a few organizational updates before we get to today's discussion. And that is in regard to today, we do want this to be an interactive discussion. We have several members of leadership that are going to set the stage for the discussion about the next kind of programming idea for CCAC. I'll be handing it off to Greg in a moment. And then he's going to hand it off to SOM, to Doug and Chris, then Andrew Broderick, Suzette will be involved. And then we will ask for your input, your questions, your thoughts as we continue to craft this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit mute. Well, actually, I can't. I'm going to try mute all and only unmute Greg. If everybody could agree to just mute their own and be responsible, that would be really helpful. If everyone could mute their computers and then unmute when you're ready to talk, that would be great. You're welcome to use the chat function to communicate without speaking, but we do want you to use your microphones when we're done with the presentation and explanation. The second item before we get started is you should have received several emails now regarding the Summit on Regional Competitiveness, which is next week, November 16th through the 20th. The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago has sent individual links to each of the CCAC members. Those are links that are specific to you as members of the guest list. There is a general link. So if there are people in your network, your organization that would like to register, contact me and I can send them the general link. They can also visit the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago website under events, and the link will be available. We have really an outstanding lineup, and I'm really asking everybody to look at the schedule, register for what you can attend, and really encourage others. And as a note, on November 19th, we have Mayor Lightfoot, Mayor Barrett from Milwaukee, and Mayor Prince from Gary. So the first time that all three kind of mega region urban mayors will be together on one panel. We have I think, an outstanding schedule, and I really hope that you can join us. I also wanted you to know that usually CCAC mails invoices in December and then emails a reminder in January. This year, we will not be mailing hard copies unless you specifically request that and you let me know the address where you are. But we are going to get the emails, the invoices emailed to you in December. If you'd like them sooner rather than later, please send me a note and I'll be sure to get those off to you as quickly as possible.
At the ceiling or at the roof?
So again, I'm going to ask everybody to please mute your computers or I will be forced to mute all. So it'd be really helpful. Thank you. And so with that, I'm really looking forward to talking about what we have planned for December and for 2021. And without further ado, let me hand this off to our chairman, Greg Hummel. Greg?
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks to all of you for joining in the collaborative discussion. A lot of work has been performed since Kelly became our executive director in 2012. Right. And I've been poring over that along with the history of the Central Area Committees since 1956. And I'm struck by the sense in which we are arriving back to a place where we've been a number of times before, where we're a trusted advisor to the city. That's taken form in many ways. Just a bit of history. We've done a number of central area plans over the course of those 60 plus years, and we're right there again. I date this, we did a lot of work that I said I would say, is characteristic of charrette type work that was specific projects. What's changed, and I think Doug and Chris and others have had a lot to do with this since about 2018 when we did the Central City Plan that was published in the Sun Times, synopsis of it on the first day of Mayor Lightfoot's administration. That a theme that emerges is that we were Central City focused for a number of those years, from 1956 until really about 2012. Then we started looking at neighborhoods, whether it was the Illinois Medical District, Cook County Hospital, the Gary Airport. Then we did a major project in terms of the connector that also attracted some additional funding, both from the federal government and local philanthropy. And it migrated into the Central City investment document, white paper that we published. And what you're going to hear about today is the commencement of a process not unlike what we did before, convening stakeholders and then doing working groups around specific work streams. The other thing that's happened that's significant in the last 18 months is the corridor revitalization work that we've done. You know, Chris Carlisle deserves a shout out. She really started that idea, and then a number of people, including Burnham and Central Area Committee folks, participated in corridor revitalization planning across 5 corridors, 51st, 61st, and 71st on the south side, Little Village on the west side, and Austin on the far west side, Chicago Avenue. That gave rise to a request on March 11th, just before we locked down for pandemic, from Commissioner Cox to actually field specific themes on the first 3 of the 12 corridors in Invest Southwest. That work was done brilliantly by a bunch of teams. Many of you participated who were on the call over the course of the summer. It gave rise to a robust RFP inquiry. We'll find out on November 24th what teams are formed to pursue those 3 corridors. And then we've been asked again and currently have underway work in 3 additional corridors, back of the Arts, Bronzeville, and South Commercial Avenue. We've further been asked to do corridor 7 through 12. That will hinge on some work that your executive committee is doing in terms of funding sustainability for that effort. And we have the city is going to be willing to do outreach for us to Major Foundation to support them. Primarily, she's been doing so much of this by herself. It's time for us to add some additional staff members to help her in order to galvanize our work. In addition to that, now we're at a point where we're taking stock of what we do in 2021, particularly as it relates to our historic geography, which is the central area. And so without further ado, I'd like to hand this off to Chris Hall. He and others, Doug Boyd for sure, and Andrew Broderick, have formulated a series of slides that have been ongoing for a good while, and there's been outreach to the city. But let me stand down and give the platform now to Chris. Thank you all for your attention.
Thanks, Greg. And yeah, I think our starting point here is we're at a moment of challenge, and of course, moments of challenge are also moments of great opportunity as well. So that's how we want to think about kind of how to move forward from here. So yeah, Andrew and I are going to kind of talk through an approach to how we think we can work over the next 4 or 5 months, and an initiative that really addresses kind of head on some of the issues that we're facing today. So Kelly, it's the next slide. And I think this is kind of what Greg just talked about. You know, we've kind of had a series of initiatives over the last few years, one of which was focused on Central City for All back in 2019, really focused on key economic questions, mobility and digital connectivity. And many people on this call were active participants. The Corridor Revitalization Initiative, which, as Greg said, Christine Carlisle kind of moved forward and then kind of led to other initiatives. And then the RFPs from over this year that we've been assisting with. So next. But where are we today? And I think this is kind of the kickoff for kind of where we are today in terms of what we need to do next. We're really at an inflection point. And, you know, there have been lots of conversations. None of this is new, but we thought it'd be useful to kind of codify this.
Hey, Chris, you jumped on mute there accidentally. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I think I got muted. I didn't do anything. So, okay. So, you know, huge disruptions to many of the things that keep Central City moving. A clear and obvious absence, you know, the emptiness of downtown is really striking. We're entering a recession, or we've entered it already, and many of the forecasts are that it's kind of up to 3 years before we really get back to full jobs, incomes, and spending. This is also, this immediate period has kind of driven an acceleration in all kinds of trends: shopping, entertainment, flexible working, which have huge implications for downtown. And also we've seen some of the constraints. You know, the COVID situation has really, I think, raised some of the livability questions around downtown. Like, really, what if you are living in your home? You are not kind of just there evenings and weekends. What are the implications? And there's been huge impact of the COVID-19 public health crisis, and also this recession. The impact is felt citywide because so many people who live in neighborhoods actually work down. So what do we need? What we really need is to kind of grasp this situation and make sure we have a stronger and more equitable recovery than we did coming out of the last recession. You know, the central city really grew, but actually it didn't grow as strongly as other cities, whether it's on the coasts or, you know, competing against the Nashvilles, the Austins, the Pittsburghs. We did well, but we didn't do as well as we could have. And I think everybody picked up on the message that it was not as equitable a recovery as it could have been. Next. So next slide. So what we're proposing here is a series of kind of related activities over the next 4 or 5 months. And Andrew will talk in a moment about the Burnham Council and the series of leadership panels addressing economy, destination, and livability as key themes. We think that's a springboard to then beginning a series of working groups that can really look at near and medium term questions, as well as provide a sounding board and input to the longer term city plan process. And the outcome will be essentially to update the work that we did previously, but the situation may have changed so much that we may reconsider that previous work as well. So it's an opportunity to kind of look at that again, but also make sure that we're aligning and working with the whole series of work streams that the city has been pursuing over the last year. Next. So what lies behind this? You know, this idea of a stronger, more equitable recovery. You know, we do need recovery from this disruption and recession, but we're still in a very competitive context nationally and globally for jobs and investment. We think that should be on the table. Growth is a key question, because ultimately our success is driven by population and jobs growth, both of which has been identified as key objectives for the city. Key question, can we get back to 3 million again? And then ultimately equity, you know, the role of central city jobs and how they relate to opportunities for everybody. Next. And we've started to think about 3 organizing themes, and they certainly will organize the Burnham Council panels, but then we think these can also organize the work into next year. One is the central city economy, which is really about the sectors that will grow, but also the relationship to smaller businesses, neighborhood businesses, you know, going beyond the corporates, key questions of development, but then also workforce, jobs, training, and hiring. Many of the questions we touched on 2 years ago. Central city as a destination. You know, it's a way to bring together lots of conversations about retail, entertainment, hospitality, culture, and conventions. You know, our downtown, our central city is the place that people come together as the region's largest destination. And then central city livability. What's that right housing mix? What do we need to be more resilient in terms of resident services? And then how do we think about our public spaces, our waterfronts, our streets, and making sure that we're resilient to future shocks, whether that's a pandemic question, public safety, or issues. Next. And also thinking about this as a series of phases. There's near term, which is about activation, which may be about a lot of the tactical things that are happening, but reestablishing the habit. You know, if you don't live and work downtown, how do you reestablish that connection? How do we help people feel like the central city is a place that they can be even under these constraints? So an activation phase. Medium term, which is restoration, which is about maximizing the power of the recovery for the central city. And then long term, which that's very much feeds into the city plan process. How do we leverage the new urban trends that we're seeing so that Chicago competes and benefits as compared to other cities in that national competition? Next. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to talk us through kind of the first step in this process, which is the December Burnham Council panels.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Chris. And I hope that you can all hear me well. Again, Andrew Broderick, I'm the president of the Burnham Council. And as a reminder, the Burnham Council is the emerging leaders group of CCAC. We've been organizing under the Burnham Council for about a year now. There's 7 of us that are part of the leadership team. And Jane Wilberding and Matt Cermak, Matt Zelenzik, Peter Ousley, I see you all on the call now. David Scully from SOM, Malik Abdul Samad from Compass, Will Erickson as well as part of the team. And we started back in August thinking about these leadership panels as a way to recognizing what Chris just mentioned and starting to have panel discussions in December about key questions. What are others doing? Help us identify some of the key issues if you're wearing a local government hat, a civic hat, or a corporate hat, or a neighborhood hat, understanding what has changed forever and what is more of a near-term or temporary change. And it's a way to generate discussion and dialogue around the future of the central area that we hope can lead into future work for CCAC in the months that lie ahead into 2021. This is a 3-day panel discussion from noon to 1, December 8th, 9th, and 10th is what we're proposing. And each webinar day would be focused on one of the key themes. And we can go to the next slide. Again, the first day will be focused on the central city economy, key industry sectors, understanding that central area jobs are not monolithic. There's lots of changes to industries that fluctuate between the 600,000+ people that call the central city a place to work heading into this pandemic. We have 3 speakers identified for the hour-long session on the economy. We have Samir Mayakar, the deputy mayor of the city of Chicago, Brad Henderson, CEO of P33, which is really focused on the tech industry, and the Burnham Council's own David Scully from SOM, an associate with SOM, who also made Crane's 40 Under 40. So congratulations to David. And we're trying to purposefully bring in different voices for this panel discussion and merge emerging voices or future leaders with established leaders as well. And the idea here would be a short format overview presentation, then really Q&A and dialogue generating discussion. Go to the next slide. And that's December 8th. That's a regular Tuesday session of CCAC, December 8th. The next day, December 9th, we're going to talk about the central city as destination, talking about retail, entertainment, hospitality, culture, conventions. We've confirmed Michael Fosnack, the Chief Marketing Officer for the City of Chicago. He also, I believe, co-chaired with Sam Skinner the Recovery Task Force back over the summer months. Lou Raisin, happy to have Lou participate with us here. She's the president of Broadway in Chicago. And then myself as a Burnham Council voice and urban designer with Perkins and Will. And then on the 3rd day, again, we'll be recording all these videos via video, and the 3rd day is on central city livability. Chris provided a good overview of this earlier about residential concerns for the voices that live in the loop in Central City, increasing amount over the past 20+ years. We have Albie Gallen, a reporter on commercial real estate with Crane Chicago Business. Bonnie Sanchez Carlson, I just spoke with her again yesterday. She's the president of the Near South Planning Board. I'll bring a distinct perspective from small business owners to residents in that neighborhood. And then for the Burnham Council's very own Malik Abdul Samad, who's a real estate consultant with Compass Commercial Real Estate, also formerly with SOAR, and a current Streeterville resident. And what we're hoping to do, and then you can go to the next slide here, I think there was one more here, on recording these and producing a summary video and help report out on these panel discussions to help inform work efforts into January through March, with which Chris can talk us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. That was great summary. So that's really the springboard to then a more evolved working group process that will happen in the first quarter next year. And this is really, as we've talked about already, strategizing the way forward for the central city, making sure that we're bringing a central city focus to a whole range of citywide initiatives, and at this point, questions, advancing equity, as we kind of got on the table a couple of years ago, and continuing to advance that, and connecting downtown central city with neighborhood opportunities. And the way we anticipate working is some initial conversations, but then really moving on to a working group process and reporting out. If you go to the next slide. And I think one of the key things that is an advance from what we've talked about in the past and what we did in the past was acting as a convener for a range of other organizations as well in this process. So we won't name check all of these, but the constituencies downtown, there are district business groups that have very specific geographic focuses. Some of these have been speakers in 4 events that CCAC has pulled together in the past. There are kind of broader based business groups that have an economic development interest. There are growth agencies. There are citywide organizations, which in some cases are nonprofits, they're givers, in other ways they're conveners, and they bring together citywide voices into larger growth conversations. And then there are resident organizations. We're also interested in bringing together neighborhood representatives as well. There should be some voice for the neighborhoods in this process. And if there's a subtext to this, it's like we've got to move beyond neighborhoods versus downtown. The future is about bringing the forces and the powers that each have together. So it'd be great to get some wider neighborhood representation into the process. So next. And key steps, and we won't go kind of through every detail here, but we think there's an initial step of kind of bringing together some of the key ideas which may be out there already. I mean, there is the recovery task force, we can draw from that. There's the work that we collectively did a couple of years ago. There's very recent Lambda Alpha roundtable, which some of the people on this call, there are findings from that. And then the Burnham Council sessions, the work from that will kind of set a foundation for our activities and investigations. Next. One second. Great. And so then we'd expect to do briefings with the individual organization leads and start to think about which working group they would like to be part of, or if they want to be part, across the different themes. So next. And then into the working group sessions themselves, which, come back to the central questions again. What are others doing? What can we learn from elsewhere? How do we reconnect people to the central city in this moment? Really understanding what's changed forever. And I think we saw a huge amount of speculation maybe in the first 3 months of the lockdown. And now I think there's maybe starting to be a sense of consensus around some of these key themes, like what's really going to play out here. So understanding what's changed forever and what may be a disruption or cyclical, and understanding what the growth forces may be in the future that we will need to harness and attend to. And then doing better than the last recovery in terms of equity and in terms of the relationship between central city and neighborhoods. And then also thinking about capital, because ultimately this moves on to the question of investment. So what are those sources and how could we use them to advance the central city? So next. So those are the 3 key steps, and we see that then generating getting into a process of generating outputs and recommendations. And we want recommendations, not just conjecture and analysis, but we want to get to recommendations. The important thing is this timing also parallels what's happening with the City of Chicago and its own plan process. We anticipate this working group process to work through the first quarter next year. That overlaps with the city's plan, which is ongoing right now. They're doing initial outreach, running topic groups over the next few months, and then have a schedule to bring those topic discussions together and start to work towards draft policy plan. We think this initiative should be a really powerful way of organizing all of the actors who are present in the central city, but also really valuable to the city's plan process as well. So next. And yeah, so ultimately we get to a series of key outputs, but also the outcome here is building the forum and building a voice amongst all these different organizations for the future. So Doug, I think you wanted to say something at the end on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I think this is a really important time, as Chris mentioned at the beginning, that the membership and broader network of this committee, the expertise and perspective we collectively bring is of great importance at this moment in time. And our ability to not only align those perspectives, but also other conversations that are happening to drive a greater outcome, not just in the near term, but one that can be sustained over years and perhaps even generations, is a role this committee has played. And in many ways, if you think through our work in the past, Chris had highlighted our ability to convene a focused dialogue, and the work of the Burnham Council is a critical first step in that. The ability of this committee and others to create and revise strategies that are of importance for the city to consider moving forward are also achievable. But perhaps one of the most interesting is how we then creatively leverage this thinking when it comes to funding sources that can be put forward, just as we had with the last central area plan and the action plan, to ensure the vibrancy and resiliency of these neighborhoods, including the central city. So maybe if you go to the next slide, and a point of departure is, there's probably many questions. We had put some up here just for feedback and discussion, but these are really points of departure to assist us in continuing this dialogue with city leaders and other groups interested in this set of discussions. I think at that point, Chris will just open it up, or Greg will open it up for discussion.
For sure, we want the committee as a whole to weigh in. Maybe to start that discussion, we could call on Suzette McKinney to share a few thoughts, because she's been part of some of the planning outreach that we've done to this point. Suzette, are you on, and could you share some thoughts, please?
Sure, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. So I just commend Chris and Andrew for such a great presentation, and also Doug for his very thoughtful comments. I think it is a great testament to the work that CCAC has done in the past few years, that the city has reached out to us once again and requested that we engage in this level of work. I think it represents the fact that the city recognizes that the members of CCAC are dedicated and committed residents of the city, or employees that are working in the city, and that our membership really cares about how our city is growing and progressing economically, as well as in other manners. I think a couple of the things that are going to be really important for us to consider in this process are, first and foremost, how does the central part of the city expand out into the neighborhoods, and what resources, assets, and initiatives that are occurring in the central city, how can those things both affect in a positive way and empower what's happening in the neighborhoods? I think the second important aspect of this work that I would point out is, we really need to think critically about what the city's priorities are for the neighborhoods and identify any natural connections to work that's taking place or that we recommend takes place in the central city. And then I think finally, we need to look very comprehensively at the impacts of COVID-19 and some of the other recent events that we've seen and how those affect the city at large, because I think that there will be significant impacts to both the central city as well as the neighborhoods. So having said all of that, I'm very excited about this process. I think it is, once again, a great opportunity for CCAC to be able to do this work and make recommendations to the city. But I'm also very excited to have some of our younger members, the members of the Burnham Council, involved in this work, because for those of us who have been around for a while, at least speaking for myself, I would say it gives me great pleasure to be able to work alongside our up and coming leaders. So I'm very, very excited. And with that, Greg, I'll turn it back over to you.
I'm gonna mute myself and let Kelly call on people. You're going to become a law professor, Kelly.
Well, as many of you know, I have spent the many months now living out my dream of being Barbara Walters and asking questions on our webinar series on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I am going to take Greg's direction and I'm going to call on some folks and ask some very pointed questions. And I'm going to start with Rana Lee, if you wouldn't mind, because Rana, you have been just such a fabulous partner. You brought Smith Group in as a new member this year. You jumped in with both feet, being involved in both round 1 and round 2 of the RFP work for Invest Southwest. And I'd like to get your gut reaction as we're talking about creating parallel programming that's focused on the central city, as well as keeping the programming going forward in the neighborhood, and what you think, both you and Smith Group as a whole, your thoughts about this for CCAC.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And I thought this was an awesome presentation and very clear that a lot of thought has gone into the diagramming of this. I think if our city ever needed someone to make sure that they're looking out for their best interests, I can't imagine a more important time than now. And I'm really proud to hear that CCAC is endeavored to take this on. So that's my outlook on the program. One of the concerns I have is the ability for the organization to move parallel on both tracks. And I got to tell you, Kelly, you have done yeoman's duty in maintaining the program, probably 4 times the normal amount, because normally this group comes together once a month. And Kelly, you've done a really great job. And I think it's we'll have to prioritize, what does CCAC's typical programming looks like post-COVID? What brings the most value to our members? And where we have the highest impact on our city as a collective, right? So I'm really excited to see this. Smith Group's going to be completely supportive. If not, Kelly, I'm sure he'll knock on my door and ask if we can help out somehow. And we're happy to do so. But I think this is important work. And I don't know anyone, in our city or even on a regional or national level looking at the importance of these issues. A lot of the organizations, Andrew, that you outlined on your slide deck are scratching pieces of it or are curious about it, but it's difficult to bring together a concerted effort to study and try to solve it, right? And what I've seen on the slide deck is the core group has been very intentional on trying to understand what the real problem is, so that when we marshal the force of CCAC, we're actually spending the time solving the right problem versus working really hard to solve the wrong problem. So I'm going to stop there and invite others to comment. Thanks, Kelly.
Well, thank you. Great. And Greg, maybe I can ask you to respond to the point that Rana raised in regard to capacity.
Well, Kelly can't sustain the effort, Rana, you're right about that, without some help. So I remember some coaching I got at least a year ago from Suzette, which is, you know, act first, let deeds speak for themselves. And I cannot tell you how proud leadership is, broadly speaking, in the efforts of both youth, the Burnham Council, and, you know, so many members have stepped up in a powerful way. Commissioner Cox is going to become a champion for funding, which will allow additional staff. The other thing that there are people on the call, Don Resnick, Bob Chodos, among others on the executive committee, are going to be working on member recruitment. One of the groups that was identified in that list of organizations, I think I had it wrong, BEDI, it's CEMDI, it's African American developers in the corridors in the city that we're partnering with. And by that I mean sharing ideas, maybe to the point of some joint projects. We're also working closely with the corporate coalition that's standing up to get significant funding from a number of well-known Chicago-based foundations. But the key here is that our actions spoke more loudly than our words in terms of credibility with the city. I think we will have funding, and I think we will also see membership growth. You know, the heart of a volunteer beats pretty strong in America, and it is a rich, rich texture in terms of the efforts that have taken place here. So I do get the prioritization piece of it, but we have 60 odd members. We could have more than that. And there's going to be a place for people to roll up their sleeves and do actual work. And Kelly will be able, I think, to sustain the effort as we add additional staff. Work in progress, but I'm optimistic about all of it. Kelly, I'm not going to let you off the hook. You have to call on.
No, I'm going back to it. And so I know that Steve Friedman always has important input. So Steve, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. That's excessively flattering. I thought that was terrific. Andrew and Chris, it's a fabulous, fabulous thought process and a fabulous process that you've outlined. One of the areas that I've been particularly interested in for quite a while, and I tried to get this worked through with another organization, is competitiveness. And a lot of the dialogue is so off base and so lacking in perspective when people, you know, pick at our tax structure and so on and so forth, that one of the things that we could do that I think would be very, very helpful is, as we dive into competitiveness, one of the things we can take on is that very, very negative narrative that is improper, that is not backed up by the facts, in my opinion. So I think that's a very important element to include that has not always been articulated. I think actually there's a history, I think, or a sense in Chicago of, it's really great here. Why should we have to compete? Why bother to compete? We don't really need to compete, which is not proven to be true, but it is really great here in Chicago. It's the best quality of life in any big city in the United States, for sure. So I think that's a particularly good element to include.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Let me ask our board member, Don Resnick. Don, anything you'd like to share?
Sure. Excuse me. I think the
one of the areas that we need to make sure that we add here, and maybe it doesn't need to be added, maybe it's already involved, and that's the kind of like what the Chicago Loop Alliance is looking at. I mean, it's the music, it's theater, it's the entertainment industry, it's kind of the heart of what drives a lot of the hospitality, what drives a lot of the economic engine downtown. And that's probably hurting more than every other area that you can think of. It's the one that's closest to dying out. I remember reading an article by John Cass in the Tribune, who talked about, if something doesn't change, we're going to be left with a bunch of chain restaurants, and we're going to look like Houston or Orlando, and we're going to lose the quality of what makes Chicago a restaurant town, a hotel town. So I just think, especially in looking at the membership drive, Greg, one of the things that I want to try to focus on is a little bit more of the hospitality industry, what's left of it, and the entertainment industry, maybe Broadway in Chicago, getting them back involved. They were members in the past. But I think that we shouldn't lose sight of what probably is one of the larger, if not the largest driver of tourism, essentially. What drives that, and just out of state suburban people, or why people want to stay in the city. I mean, how many all of us probably know people who have moved out of the city, out to the suburbs, or thinking about it, because the reason they're in the city, it doesn't exist anymore. And so I think we just need to keep that in mind when we're putting together the programs that we're talking about.
Thank you, Dan. Julie, I'd love to hear your perspective, given your role in higher ed and your participation in countless other groups.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I am a board member of the Chicago Loop Alliance and the Near South Planning Board, as well as board member treasurer, I think now, of the America's Urban Campus, which is a higher education consortium here in Chicago. So when I look through this, I look through it through a lens of how, and we've done a lot of work on this with the America's Urban Campus group, is what is the economic impact of higher education on the city of Chicago? And right now the students aren't on campus, they're at home studying. The faculty are at home delivering programming. Offices are empty. Administration is really at a standstill. We're just having essential staff being on campus. And I think this has really stalled us out. And I think there are going to be some changes with higher education coming forward. I think it was already in the mix because we are seeing less students. There's less population to draw from for new students. So we're going to have to recast who we are and what we're servicing. And maybe it's more recasting it to upskilling and reskilling people already in the workforce. So traditional higher education, I think it's a long way to go, but it definitely is in the change route. I don't know when exactly it will get there, but I know that it will eventually, and it will have to, because the market's going to force it to. When you talk about tourism, that's a huge thing. Higher education brings a huge tourism piece to the city. You think about, recruitment, graduations, any sort of sporting or cultural events, all of that is now happening virtually or not happening at all. And what is that going to look like? So I really think that higher education in education itself is a key factor in what you're looking at in moving forward. We recorded an $8 billion economic impact on the city back in 2018. So our industry is strong, and it's an economic engine that cannot be looked over. And one last thing, one thing that we have been focusing on a lot, and it's proved to be very helpful, especially with Rural Business Chicago, is we develop the talent in the city. 80% of our students are staying in the city and living and working here and giving back. And I think that's an important metric to take a look at, and how that will change going forward if we continue to stay in this virtual environment and we lose that population who would come here, love the city, and then want to stay here and work. And what does that look like? And we've been doing some really great work with the career Center folks from the 20 different institutions. They've been working really hard with World Business on programming and virtual career fairs and things like that. So it's that talent development piece that is the one major contribution that higher education gives as well.
Thank you, Julie. That's really, really insightful. And I just want everybody to know that in regard to your question about the future of work, that is a topic that Becky Frankowitz with Manpower Group, President for North America, will be speaking on Friday, November 20th at the summit. So if that's of interest, please tune into that conversation. So I'd like to go again to a new member, and Alex. Is Alex Stokes still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, great.
Yeah, I'm Alex Stokes. I'm with HRNA. I have been very pleased to be involved in the corridor work that we have been undertaking, specifically with many of the people on this call I see involved in the Bronzeville team. And yeah, I don't have too much to add, but was an interesting presentation. I like the idea of spending some more time in the coming months to focus on the center city as well as the corridors. And I am excited to be part of that however I can be.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Diane, I know you are also a new member and you've been involved in both round 1 and 2 with our Invest Southwest. Would love your thoughts on the idea of the work we're talking about for the Central City.
It's very, very interesting and broad reaching, as it should be. I think the thing that's just caught my attention the most is thinking about how to truly understand what the relationship between the neighborhoods and the central city should be, what people in the neighborhoods think it should be. And we need to have a way as part of our work to be able to dive deeply into that and not just presume that it's, you know, it's mobility issues or simply jobs, you know, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to thinking through what that process should be like.
Great, thank you. Turning to a Burnham Council member, Brett. First, I want to acknowledge that Brett is really assisting the elected Burnham Council leadership, and she is taking the lead on creating the email, the blast email and the flyer that is helping to promote this program. So I am so grateful, Brett, for your assistance with that. So I know you've been privy to conversations going back since the summer talking about this. So anything you'd like to share from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I'm a landscape architect, so I look at this through the lens of public space very often, and just thinking about our public spaces and corridors and streets and parks downtown, and just see that right now, and I'm hearing through a lot of our project work, just that, you know, it's greatly impacting, you know, those public spaces and how comfortable people feel in those public spaces. And so I think what I've heard is that there's a larger issue to address than just beautifying our corridors and streets, is that we need to start thinking about this issue a little bit from a larger lens, a higher level. And I think this study and these conversations that CCAC is bringing up right now through the Burnham Council is so relevant. And I'm just so grateful, like others have said, that the group is dedicating themselves to this right now. So I really look forward to being a part of these conversations to see where that might lead us in approaching these issues from so many different angles. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help get us ready to launch the program. Thomas McElroy, I'm not sure what time you joined, but if you have anything to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, one, we greatly appreciate being able to participate with lots of the individuals who are on this call on now the second Invest Southwest proposal. We really think that CCAC should play a major role in the city figuring out what the new plan is, just by virtue of there is so much history inside of this group. But by virtue of our participation in Invest Southwest, from an consulting standpoint, I think those of us in this group are better prepared to have the discussion on how to better bridge what is going on in the neighborhoods and what is going on downtown and closer to the central district. And by virtue of our participation in what's going on in Invest Southwest, I think some of the negative comments of, you know, you're only downtown and you don't know what's going on in the neighborhood begins to become a moot point. Oh, actually, yes, we do know what's going on. Therefore, we're in a better position to see how those things should be married together. There's a lot going on in Chicago between the mega developments that are going on. There will be a casino here. Whether anyone particularly likes it or not, there's going to be one. And you know, if we're lucky enough to flip a couple of Senate seats in Georgia, from a political standpoint in DC, Chicago is going to be in such a position because if Schumer's majority leader, his second chair is Dick Durbin. And so the kinds of programs that will be coming out of DC and the kind of infrastructure money and so forth that will be going to the cities, Chicago is going to be very well placed. And then there are now resources to make some of these things that we will be talking about in improving neighborhoods and improving people's lives in neighborhoods, dealing with health disparities and food deserts and other things. There will be actual dollars to help make that be a reality and not just, you know, a talking point.
Right. Yes, good points. Thank you, Thomas. And, you know, Thomas is part of the Bronzeville team for this round 2, and as is Rana and so many others. And, you know, we're meeting on Sunday afternoon, you know, walking the corridor with the aldermen. And so the commitment to CCAC's work is so above and beyond. And I just really want to make sure that everybody understands how grateful I am and what a contribution that is, you know, for the work that we do. Drakia, I know you and I have known each other since the Rooftop Guild, and you're active on behalf of Lend Lease. So yes. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
You know, for me, something that keeps coming to mind as I watch the city kind of cope with the impacts of COVID. And I am born and raised in Detroit. And so that's what inspired me to go into real estate, to go into development. Everyone knows that about me. I'm always talking about Detroit and excited about the good things going on there. When I see, you know, the plywood up, when I see the city shut down the way it is, and the way people have been, you know, economically impacted, and of course, first and foremost, you know, health-wise, family-wise, it does kind of, there's some remnants of the impact that Detroit has gone through the last 30 to 40 years. So it's very sad to see, but I'm really curious, and I think someone touched on this earlier, how the student population here, the young professional population here is affected, and how, what the long-term effects of that on the city. We have 13 major universities and colleges in the city of Chicago and just on the outskirts. So much talent, so much intelligence, high earners that you know have come here and made a life here and are contributing. And they certainly impacted the downtown, right? And so I'm just a little concerned on how much more of this will eventually start to perhaps drive them away or drive them to the suburbs or to other cities and things like that. Because we are seeing a little bit of young professionals just saying, well, I'll just go back home, because if I'm working from home, I can work from my mom's house in Ohio or whatever have you. So that's really been on my mind and on my heart, because it's going to have a significant impact on the city. And so connecting with the universities, connecting with that population is just something that I've been, you know, thinking about. So I'd love to explore more of that with you all. And yeah, so right. Yeah, thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, did I see you say the number 20? Yes. So Jackie, just so you know, there's 20 higher ed institutions in the Chicago downtown area.
No, it's 20 in the city of Chicago, the city proper, 606 zip code. That includes the downtown Northwestern. There's 13 in the downtown area. So those are the data points.
Great, thank you. It's important for all of us to know.
Kelly,
Chris, yes, Rana?
if I may, I'm sorry, because I have to go at 1 o'clock. As I've been listening to the comments, one thing that I did not see on the presentation slide deck is this notion of being an equitable city. You know, so there's been lots of commentary around the country about what is equity. And as we've been involved in the neighborhoods, we often hear the comment from residents, you know, there's a tale of two neighborhoods. And we're all living in the same neighborhood. So I think decades ago, the distinction was what is urban and what is rural, or what is urban versus suburban. And I think we need to think about the vitality and vibrancy of our economy and city. And that really rests upon addressing segregation, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. I don't have the answer for that. I know it's a really big question, but you know, I'm quite honestly sad to see so much bad press around Chicago. And usually it's about the haves and the have-nots, and we've got to find a way to start having meaningful conversations around that.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me jump in.
Yes, and just before you do jump off.
On Rand's comment, I was part of a call last week that involved the leading lights within the Chicago development community, the Buck organization, Related Midwest, Sterling Bay, as many as of those notable folks were present with a group of African American developers. And the goal in our neighborhood corridor work is to learn, but also if we can stand up an alliance with those developers and CEMDI and the corporate coalition, then we're also going to have voices in the room that haven't been there before, that are addressing issues in the core. So we're mindful of it. I candidly, I think that is an absolutely critical point. And to state the obvious, the administration in the city, the mayor, and all the way down, Samir among many others, care deeply about that. We have to figure out a way to actually embed it in our body of work, and we're going to try to do that.
Yes, and in the slide deck, there was a point that say a more equitable return. So that is absolutely on our radar screen. I know we only have about 2 minutes left, and I do want to wrap things up. So if there's anybody that has a really important comment that they want to share, just raise their hand. Anybody that I did not call on that desperately wants to say something? Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask Chris and Andrew.
Wait, Kelly, it's Suzette. I couldn't get off mute. Can I just say something really, really quickly?
Of course. Yes, please.
Yes. So I just wanted to say, you know, to Rana's point, you know, Rana, I say all the time, I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, but I went to school on the west side, and now I work on the west side. So to your point about equity and fairness and all of that, that is why I am here. But I do concur with what Greg has said and with others have said with regards to having folks from the neighborhood involved. And that's really what I took from the slide that Chris and Andrew presented, the slide that talked about all of the neighborhood organizations that would be involved in the work. So I just wanted to, you know, make a point to highlight what you were saying, but also to let you know that we are not going to forget that. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kelly.
No, thank you, Suzette. So Chris and Andrew, would you like to wrap things up?
I think these are, you know, the input is great and the energy is great. And I think we're just going to try and leverage this going forward. I think the central ethos here is we need to recover, we need to do it stronger than last time, and we need to do it more equitably than last time. Those are really kind of anchoring themes. But I would say get ready and invite your friends to the Burnham Council events that Andrew is leading on, and then, you know, get ready, get your thinking caps on, and so that we can run into this in the first quarter next year.
Yes, Andrew. So again, mark your calendars for December 8th, 9th, and 10th, 12 to 1. Watch your email for the registration links. Look forward to hopefully having you participate next week with the summit. And send me an email. Let me know what you thought about today's meeting and your interest in being part of the working teams that will be organizing for 2021. So with that is 1 o'clock on the dot. And I am so grateful again for each and every one of you. Please stay healthy. Please keep in touch. And again, thank you so much for all of your support and all you do for CCAC. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Chris.